A single clay tablet, broken in two, was found buried in the ash of a crumbling palace. It came from a kingdom that no longer exists, from a king whose name was forgotten, from a moment when someone was still trying, desperately, to hold the world together. But this story doesn't begin in a palace or on parchment. It begins in the cold forests and mist-covered hills of prehistoric Europe. No names, no writing, just graves. Before Rome, before Greece, before even the first lines of cuneiform reached the western hills, a new kind of power emerged. Not power over temples, not power through armies, but something quieter, something older. In a field of grass, beneath a burial mound untouched for nearly 4,000 years, a crownless man was laid to rest. At his side, an axe of bronze, a dagger, and an amber bead that came from hundreds of kilometers away. His body was long gone, but beside his ribs, still resting in the dark, was a disc, bronze and gold, stars arranged in constellations, the moon, the sun, a calendar of the heavens. Who was he? A king? A priest? A farmer who claimed the sky? Did these early rulers command the land, or something far more powerful? In the heart of what is now Central Europe, stretching across parts of Germany, Poland, and Czechia, a civilization took shape between 2300 and 1600 BCE. We call them the Unetice Culture. They didn't build pyramids or leave behind great libraries. There were no ziggurats, no written codes, no records of conquest, and yet they were the first to rule. At the time, the land was changing. Warmer weather created more open fields, pushing back the thick forests that once covered the continent. People lived in small tribal groups, descended from older cultures like the corded ware and bell beaker peoples. They herded animals, harvested barley, buried their dead in collective graves. But something shifted. Something different appeared with the Unetice. They found a new material, shiny, hard, otherworldly, bronze. But bronze wasn't just a tool, it was a signal, a message. Because bronze doesn't occur naturally, it must be made, copper and tin, smelted together in the right proportion, at the right temperature. It takes knowledge, trade, labor, planning. It takes power. And the Unetice figured that out. Instead of conquering their neighbors, they controlled the metal. Copper came from the Alps, tin from Slovakia, amber from the Baltic. These were long-distance trade routes running through forest paths, along rivers, across mountains. And the Unetice sat in the middle, gatekeepers of material and meaning. They didn't need palaces, they had supply lines. Their settlements were scattered, often built on hilltops, but not in the way we think of cities. There were no great walls, no temples, no central market squares. Instead, we see planned layouts, large buildings for elites, and storage pits, because whoever controlled the food and bronze controlled everything else. They built no thrones, but they left tombs, and that's where we see their real power. On a ridge in what is now eastern Germany stands a burial mound. It rises gently from the earth, shaped by human hands nearly 4,000 years ago. Beneath its surface, archaeologists uncovered the tomb of a single man. This is the Leubingen tumulus, dated to around 1940 BCE. Inside, they found bronze weapons, gold ornaments, and pieces of amber, luxuries from across the continent. The wooden chamber that once surrounded the man had long since decayed, but the layout was unmistakable. This wasn't just a burial, it was a statement. The man buried here wasn't a commoner. He wasn't even just wealthy, he was powerful, and his power was measured in metal. Unlike the earlier collective graves of Neolithic Europe, Unetice elites were buried alone, each mound rising over the body of one man, claiming the land around it, commanding the memory of those who looked upon it. These weren't community leaders in the old sense. They were something new, individual lords. Archaeologists believe that the Unetice society was structured around chiefdoms or lineage-based aristocracies. Power wasn't just inherited, it was displayed. Your axe had to shine. Your ornaments had to travel. Your grave had to speak for you long after your voice was gone. Bronze, gold, and amber became more than materials. They became symbols, language, a code of control that only the elite could afford to write in. And that control extended beyond the earth. Because these people didn't just shape the land, they watched the sky. In 1999, in the woods near Nebra, Germany, a pair of looters dug into a hill and found something no one expected. A bronze disc about 30 centimeters across, with strange gold symbols on its face. A sun, a crescent moon, a scattering of stars, horizon arcs, and a solar boat. It had been buried there around 1600 BCE, centuries after the Leubingen tomb, and yet it carried the same coded authority. This was the Nebra sky disk. At first, it seemed like an odd artwork, but as astronomers and archaeologists examined it, something extraordinary emerged. The disk wasn't decorative, it was functional. The gold arcs marked the horizon points of the summer and winter solstices. When aligned correctly, they could predict the timing of harvests and planting seasons, critical in a pre-literate society. In essence, it was a calendar, a map of the heavens buried in the dirt. But here's the deeper meaning. This wasn't just a tool. It was power. Because if you could read the sky, you could claim the right moment to plant, the right moment to reap, the right moment to rule. And if others couldn't read it, then you spoke on behalf of the gods, on behalf of the stars. It was astronomical knowledge weaponized, not for war, but for legitimacy. Whoever buried this disk didn't want it lost. They wanted it hidden. Perhaps because their world was changing. Perhaps because that knowledge, once secret, had lost its edge. But for a time, someone stood on that hill, holding a bronze disc in the light of the setting sun, and they believed they understood the sky. And then they were gone. By around 1600 BCE, the Unetice culture fades from the record. Not with fire, not with a great battle. There is no Troy, no Nineveh, no Akkadian chronicle of collapse. Just silence. Their successors, the tumulus culture, then the Urnfield people, continued some of their practices. Burial mounds, bronze tools. But something had shifted. The great elite graves vanish. The trade networks fragment. The astronomical rituals seem to fall out of favor. It's not a disappearance, it's an unraveling. The system that held the Bronze Lords together, trade, prestige, visibility, began to break down. Maybe resources dried up. Maybe rival powers emerged. Maybe the very tools they had used to control time no longer gave them an advantage. We'll never know for certain, because their names are lost, their language never written, their faces erased. All that remains are their graves and the metal. The Leubingen Lord, the Nebra disc, a dagger here, a bead there, fragments of a vanished class. Before thrones had marble, before kings had crowns, before gods had names, there were these men, these rulers. And what they left behind wasn't an empire. It wasn't a city. It wasn't a law. It was a question. What is power when no one remembers your name? If this story changed how you think about the past, about the people who shaped it before, then subscribe. Because here, at Age of Past, we don't chase myths. We chase what came before them. And sometimes the deepest echoes don't come from legends. They come from graves, from bronze, from stars, from the people who ruled before history began.